talk about whether the tapes have been deleted or whether he knows if anyone else in the National Party knows whether the tapes have been deleted or whether Todd Barclay was advised to delete them. There are all these kinds of questions without answers to them.
Yeah.
So should he be appearing all the time?
Yeah, I think the goal of a leader like John Key is to have the appearance that you're being incredibly open, that you're fronting up, that you're everywhere talking about this, willing to respond to the allegations without actually saying much and without actually, making yourself or other people in the National Party, making them guilty. So whether he's achieving that or not, well, I don't think he is. And so this is what a lot of PR people will have you do. They'll have you front-foot it and just show that you're really open. And unfortunately, it's not working for English because, of course, I think he's not a natural spin doctor. He's not a natural, deceptive politician. So it doesn't really suit his way of operating.
Thank you for that analysis, Bryce. Dr. Bryce Edwards on the panel. Not a lot of moment left. Not many moments left to discuss things of moment. Just before a Capitol Hill meeting on tax reform, attended by President Trump's daughter and the top White House advisor Ivanka Trump, a hug between her and Senator Marco Rubio became the talk of the town, and he went in for the hug apparently, and she stood still clutching her handbag. Both sides have spent a few days laughing it off. And this is actually an interesting issue. Should men stop hugging women, or vice versa, that they don't really know? Has it become quite common, and oddly so?
I'd be delighted if I knew when I was supposed to and when I'm not. I'd be delighted, in fact, to go back to shaking hands and having no hugging at all if that was the price of simplicity.
I think high EQ is needed, and I think that for me, and it's always good to keep a distance until it is clear that the invitation is to go in.
Yes.
I think with respect, I just was thinking, you get into that situation sometime with the tangata whenua. You're not sure whether they're going to give you, well, for me, I'm not sure whether they're going to give me a kiss on my cheek or whether we're going to hongi first.
Yeah.
So I now know how you do it. You hold them firmly in the hand, you look them in the eye, so that makes it clear that you're going to hongi first, and then you turn your cheek. But you've got to get that clear, otherwise it becomes very awkward. I think the key thing is to pause and just see if you can establish an understanding with the other side. The key thing is not to presume and to go in, otherwise one of you is going to get wrong-footed.
That's great advice. Of course, sometimes you're flustered and nervous and just want to do things in a hurry, don't you?
Well, if you're in a hurry, then please don't hug. Just stand clear.
Interestingly enough, in psychology today, European researchers have found that older adults like touch more than younger people do and welcome it more than younger people do. And I think there's probably some truth.
Is that to do with the fact that we're now all on the internet and we send each other texts? My son sends me a text from downstairs.
That's it.
I just say, Jack, use your legs or they'll drop off.
And the best piece of advice in psychology today, be very careful about hugging someone at work.
Ah.
Don't say that report you wrote was tremendous. Here, let me give you a hug.
Sexual harassment.
That's exactly right. Mei Chen, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Nice to have you on the panel, and nice to have you on too, Stephen Franks.
Thank you, a pleasure as always.
Both of you, please come back again soon, or when time permits. That's us for another day. Thanks for your company, everybody. The panel returns tomorrow, and Checkpoints with John Campbell coming right up.
Kia ora everyone. Tonight, I'm touching wood as I say this, Team New Zealand sits on the brink of an America's Cup victory. We will have the latest from Bermuda, plus the Kiwi boat builder behind Oracle, Team Japan, and actually so much more. Tells us what a victory either way will mean for him and his business. The Shipwreck New Zealander's extraordinary survival story after his yacht struck a reef in the Pacific. Jeff Marsland says it was like a freight train hitting a brick wall. Plus, it's winter and the Salvation Army is seeing demand for food, financial assistance and emergency accommodation up on the same time last year. And Bill English has just held his post-cabinet media conference. We will have the latest from that. Thank you for being with us. Checkpoint is next.
RNZ News at 5. Good afternoon, I'm Anna Thomas. A New Zealander rescued from a stricken yacht feared for his life as it crashed into a remote Pacific atoll. The 18-metre vessel Jungle, with 4 New Zealanders on board, hit a reef more than 400 kilometres southeast of Fiji's capital, Suva, early on Friday morning. Speaking from Fiji, Jeff Marsden told Checkpoint that the yacht's radar failed to see the reef in the king tide. He says as Jungle crashed onto the reef, they all feared for their lives, and he saw his family's faces. Mr. Marsden says when dawn broke, they saw there was an island nearby, and its 4 inhabitants helped them to safety. The Fijian Navy took them to Suva, and he says they're looking forward to seeing their families again when they return home in the next few days. The Prime Minister, Bill English, says the Todd Barclay controversy is just an employment dispute between 2 people. Mr. Barclay will not stand again at this year's general election after the scandal involving a former electorate staff member and a secret recording she told the police the MP had made of her in their Gore office. Bill English has been questioned repeatedly over the matter and is now trying to draw a line under it.
At the heart of this is just 2 people who fell out badly. I happen to know them. That's what's at the heart of this, and I would hope that as a result of this whole process, where the third step's been Todd Barclay making a decision about leaving Parliament, that there's some resolution to the sad situation of these people whom I know well, who are good people.
Prime Minister Bill English. The High Court in Wellington has been told that scientific research has shown that the negative effects of high greenhouse gas emissions are being seen much more quickly than was expected. A Hamilton law student, Sarah Thompson, is taking a case against the Minister for Climate Change Issues, challenging the way in which climate targets have been set. Ms Thompson's lawyer, Davy Salmon, said an international assessment report on climate change issues found, for example, that coral reefs, which were described as the engine room for fisheries, were experiencing large-scale bleaching, and the sea around the Antarctic ice sheet was warming. Davy Salmon said those setting New Zealand's emissions targets could not have thought it was reasonable to match those of other countries. He said the science had already shown the collective reduction that would be achieved was still not sufficient to avert the effects of climate change. The Mayor of Gisborne says New Zealand First's proposal to return the GST tourists pay to the regions in which they spent their money is a fantastic idea. Mayor Meng Foon says there is already a lot of local government support for the regions to get at least a percentage of tourists' GST returned to them.
Tourists that come here, the ratepayers still have to pay for their rubbish, the water usage, the use of the roads and other public amenities, toilets like that. So if they spend something in our district, it will be good. A proportion of that GST goes to helping the residents that actually pay for that infrastructure.
The Mayor of Gisborne, Meng Foon. A passenger boat carrying more than 150 tourists has sunk in a reservoir in Colombia. The Colombian President, Juan Manuel Santos, says at least 6 people have died in the accident. 15 passengers are missing. A witness, Louisa Murphy, says the boat went down in minutes.
It was tilting to one side slightly. The next moment it tipped even further in the opposite direction and then back again towards us. And at that point I saw things flying off the side of the boat. Within, I think, probably about 20 seconds, the boat had sort of sunk with just the top deck visible. So it was all so quick.
An eyewitness, Louisa Murphy. A major rescue effort involving Colombia's Air Force and firefighters from nearby cities is continuing. A search has failed to find a missing Southland fisherman, and the police say they will try again tomorrow. The operation began last night after the 29-year-old man from near Invercargill didn't return from fishing off the rocks at Slope Point. His vehicle, tackle box and fishing rod have been found. It's 5:04. Team USA are at desperation point in the America's Cup with Jimmy Spittle set to give up the helm. Team New Zealand needs just one more win to take the cup from the defenders. Anything and everything is being considered by Oracle as they try and hold off the New Zealand syndicate, and skipper Spittle concedes that could mean replacing him with fellow Australian Tom Slingsby.
Every single team member in Oracle Team USA will do whatever will help the team win. So we'll review it, throw everything on the table, and we'll put the team, the people, the boat, the configuration on the water tomorrow that we think will give us our best chance of winning.
Jimmy Spittle. The British boxer Hughie Fury has landed the first blow against New Zealand's heavyweight world champion Joseph Parker before the pair have even stepped into the ring. Parker will have to defend his WBO heavyweight world title in Fury's hometown of Manchester on September the 23rd, after Fury pulled out of their first scheduled bout in Auckland in May. Matt Chatterton reports.
Hughie Fury pulled out just 2 weeks before his scheduled fight against Joseph Parker, citing a back injury. In the lead-up to Fury's withdrawal, the British boxers' camp was so opposed to fighting Parker in New Zealand that they tried to shift the bout to England at the last minute. Parker ended up fighting unheralded Romanian Razvan Cojanu. However, Fury still holds the WBO's mandatory challenge, and Parker's management team, Juco, have had to cave to Fury's demands and move the fight to Manchester. This is Matt Chatterton.
And the New Zealand golfer Danny Lee has recorded his best result on the PGA Tour this year, finishing in a tie for third at the latest tournament in Connecticut. And that's the news.
A Marae cries foul.
We work really hard. Every morning we're making the breakfast for our guests, our lunches, the dinners, day in, day out. And, this is Marae life. To be disrespected like this is a bit of a low blow.
An invasion.
We've just suddenly seen this week the sort of invasion of the Red Army as it's been billed, and it just adds such a lovely sense of colour. These tours are just so unique.
Stars in their eyes.
On a moonlit night, you can nearly read a book outside. When the moon's not up, it's as dark as there's just no light at all.
Illuminating coverage. Guy Aspinall and Susie Ferguson, Morning Reports, weekdays from 6.
Coming up on 9 to noon today, what's being done to address alarmingly high levels of burnout and stress among primary school principals? How a Kiwi company dedicated to improving peer review in science is getting bigger. Scotland's Children's Commissioner Bruce Adamson on the similar challenges faced by Kiwi and Scottish youths. And something different for the munchie addict, Japanese junk food. Join me, Lynn Freeman, in for Catherine Ryan from 9 to noon on RNZ National.
And now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. Northland and Auckland, isolated showers clearing in Auckland and Northland. Waikato, Waitomo, Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country, fine weather. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay showers easing tonight, clearing in Hawke's Bay tomorrow. To Taranaki and Wellington, also the Wairarapa, a few showers today, then fine with areas of cloud. Marlborough, Nelson and Canterbury, cloud increasing tomorrow with a few spots of rain in Canterbury from the afternoon. Bulla and northern Westland, cloud increasing today. A few showers in Westland from tonight. For southern Westland and Fiordland, rain, possibly heavy, easing to a few showers tomorrow morning and clearing in Fiordland. Otago and Southland, cloud increasing, a little bit of rain tonight or tomorrow. And for the Chatham Islands, showers. RNZ National, it's 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint with John Campbell.
Thank you very much indeed, Anna Thomas. Coming up on the program tonight, Bill English has just held his post-cabinet media conference. We'll have the latest from that. The Salvation Army says life at the bottom isn't getting easier despite all the coverage of homelessness, child poverty and people struggling to get by. Fire in Pakistan and the aftermath of fire in London, and awful luck followed by remarkable luck. The Kiwi yacht that hit a reef in the middle of nowhere, only to find there were other people there. But first, we head to Bermuda, where Team New Zealand is on the brink of America's Cup victory. Now, numerically, that's a statement of fact. New Zealand lead Oracle 6-1. It's a 1-7 contest, but after San Francisco, we know the story. New Zealand led 8-1, 1-9, and lost. There's caution in the New Zealand camp even now. First race tomorrow morning, just after 5 a.m. our time. If New Zealand win, the America's Cup will be defended in New Zealand. It's 14 years since that last happened, with New Zealand losing to the Swiss challenger Alinghi in Auckland in 2003. Our reporter Todd Nile is in Bermuda and compiled this look at the day.
2 solid wins in a row, and the crowd, as they say, went wild.
Absolutely awesome. I think we're in paradise here. It's just a privilege to be here, and the Bermudians pull up a great venue. Thank you. And regards to everyone at home. Hey, every Kiwi should be proud of this team. Great.
Yeah. Was that something you thought might happen today, 2 in a row?
Absolutely. We had all the confidence in the world that we were going to have 2 in a row. So only one tomorrow, and then the Cup's ours, and we'll be bringing it back to NZ. Yay.
How about yourself? Is job almost done?
Almost done, but we won't count our chickens, just in case.
A quieter response from Heather Burling, mother of the 26-year-old helmsman who's become the face of the campaign.
Really happy. That was awesome racing today, and I'm just really proud of the whole team. They've done awesomely well.
Did you hope that the day might go like this?
Yes, definitely I hoped it, and definitely I thought it would, but it's never over till it's over.
How are you going to cope tomorrow?
Oh, much easier being 2 more wins up. Only need 1 more race. Yep, it looks good.
Mrs. Burling's boy Peter carved up Oracle in both starts and led to the finish in the second race, looping around the American boat, bringing it almost to a halt and romping away.
You know, when you're 14 seconds ahead at the start, your life's pretty easy. So, you know, we feel like we made some massive steps forward. You know, that's full credit to the guys like Ray Davies and Murray Jones that have, you know, been going over a lot of footage, a lot of pre-starts, just like myself, and, you know, making a better plan.
Everyone able to sleep tonight?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think sleeping's definitely not my weak suit, and I never have any issues there.
Oracle's Jimmy Spithill seems undeterred by being brought to match point and clearly being outsailed. He's sure the next win can be his.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think we've proven that. I think in the qualifiers we won 2 races against them for a reason. We won the qualifiers for a reason. We took a race win off them yesterday for a reason. So that's, you know, we've got to remember that. But we've also got to remember we just can't afford to make more mistakes than the other team. You know, clearly that's decided races so far in this America's Cup, and that'll decide it tomorrow. So, yeah, for us, all we've got to think about is just focusing on keeping the mistakes down, executing, taking a race win, and then we'll take the rest of it on from there.
His fans are mixed on the comeback line.
I'm feeling very optimistic. I mean, last time they came back at this point, and I'm looking forward to the excitement the next few days. Extra races in Bermuda, extra days in Bermuda. Who could be sorry about that?
It was a very sad day today, I think. If Oracle had pulled it back, then it would have made for a very exciting tomorrow. Bit unfortunate, but yeah, I live in Bermuda, and as far as I'm concerned, Bermuda's done an absolutely fantastic job, and yeah, so pleased with Bermuda.
A team which says it nearly folded after the San Francisco loss now stands 1 win away from triumph. Coach Ray Davies has the job of keeping heads cool.
It's not really a nerves thing, like it's a big event. And yeah, there's a lot of pressure, but this is what the team does. And we put ourselves under a lot of pressure at events all the time. And obviously the younger guys in the team have also been in pressure situations, and that's what, you know, world-class sport is. You sort of live in a bit of a pressure cooker. So look, it is just another day's yachting for us, and yeah, there's huge consequence if we can pull it off, but look, there's pressure, but you just actually rise to that occasion.
The fans have no doubt that tomorrow will be that occasion, but in sport nothing is certain. In Bermuda, mo te hotaka o te ahiahi, ko Todd Nile tēnei.
Back in New Zealand, more than 200 people cheered and clapped at the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron in Auckland as Team New Zealand won both races. And while there's cautious optimism about the team's chances of securing victory tomorrow, many aren't taking anything for granted, especially not when the opponent is Jimmy Spithill and Oracle Team USA.
It's backs against the wall for them tomorrow. They're going to come out fighting.
He's a fighting Aussie like us, and he's going to say, well, what can we do now?
It was absolutely magnificent. The guys made no errors. They killed him at the start, and it was just a procession after that. They really sailed well. And we were so proud of them.
The inconsistencies I was looking for weren't there, and we sailed a perfect race and did everything right, but you know, it isn't won yet, but it's close.
I think what you're seeing here is a new generation of boat, a new generation of crew, and if you go back to the early days of New Zealand's involvement in the America's Cup, we've been the most innovative right through to today, from fiberglass boats to foils, all created by the Kiwis, and coming up with a young team like we've got, and this boat that's just a true generation ahead of what the Defender has got. has been a stroke of genius by Team New Zealand.
It was beautiful sailing. The way he started, but just everything he did around the course. And that's what we expect from this boat. Right through the entire regatta, they've always been the most disciplined crew. It just really showed up today, I think. Yeah.
Guess what? I really like that Peter Burling. I like him a lot. He is not afraid about Jimmy Spittle. He just goes for it. He's great.
Whatever happens tomorrow morning in Bermuda, at one level, the America's Cup is already New Zealand's Cup. Not on the water yet, but certainly before it. In Warkworth, a town just north of Auckland, there's a company called Core Builders Composites, CBC. They build high-performance racing yachts. And before we move on, I asked CBC's General Manager, Tim Smythe, about their involvement in the regatta.
Well, we built the vast majority of the Oracle boat, the Japanese boat, probably good 30% of the Swedish boat. We built the wing for the French yacht. We also did a lot of the fundamental tooling of the One Design class components, and we sold some of that tooling. We certainly rented our set of tooling to Team New Zealand. We have a full metal shop in our workshop as well, so we did a lot of the standardised metal fittings that were here. A lot of this work is, and we also distribute a lot of work to other downstream New Zealand industries. So, yeah, created a lot of business here.
So that's a pretty impressive CV, and that's been one of the justifications for the government's financial backing of Team New Zealand, that the Cup has been a bonanza for boat building here in this country. But that's occurred under country of origin building rules that have effectively allowed syndicates to build their boats wherever they like. And as it's happened, as you heard, first and foremost, that's been in New Zealand. Now, if they win, Team New Zealand can tighten that rule, requiring more of the boat to be built in the country the challenger comes from: France, Sweden, Japan, the US, Britain, and so on. So as Tim Smythe points out, under current rules, a Team New Zealand win is a dream scenario, racing here and building here, a true win-win. But
under another scenario, it's disastrous, and I don't want to New Zealand's going to, if it wins the Cup, it's fully entitled to make the decision that it wants to. I'd hate to be lecturing them, but it is true that one of the biggest challenges of having an America's Cup is getting more teams to enter. And I know Larry was motivated to keep the costs down and to make it easier for other countries to enter. Now, what you have to realise is that if you're a challenger in the America's Cup, the last thing you want to see is too many other challengers, because it makes it harder for you to compete. So the challengers will typically, band together and create set of rules which they think favour them and don't necessarily favour the other teams. And one of those rules is the constructed in country rule, and it is a traditional part of the deed of gift, so it's pretty hard to get rid of. You've got to have some element of that. Now, if you're a challenging country with a good boat building industry like Team New Zealand, you don't want to see other people being able to utilise the New Zealand boat build resource. So you say, no, I'd prefer a constructed in country rule that's really tight, that says everyone's got to build their boats in their own country.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry, I'm just computing this now. So what you're saying is if New Zealand wins, touch wood, and we are defending in New Zealand, the challenges that you are currently getting work from, actually including the defender that you're currently getting work from, won't be able to come to you any longer?
Well, they will be if the Team New Zealand maintains the same rules, which we have now, which is only a small percentage of the boat has to be built in another country. But they are on record of having voted against that particular rule in this Cup. They didn't, but they may have changed their mind by now, but they certainly voted against that, relaxing of the rule. And I can understand it as a challenger. It's only got to make it easier for other challengers. I mean, you wouldn't have seen a Japanese challenge, I don't think. They wouldn't have had the wherewithal and the resources to build their boat, within a reasonable time scale to a reasonable cost inside Japan. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's a much bigger hurdle for them to build their boats. It's easier to come to a country like New Zealand where there's established expertise. So that business is there, but of course it means more challenges, which makes it harder to win the Cup. So the Cup's pretty complex like this.
Yes, and there's an irony appearing to me, because when we talk about the America's Cup, we say it's great for tourism, and we also say it's great for the boat building business, the work you guys do. But what you're saying is that potentially, if New Zealand says your boat has to be country of origin, actually it's going to be bad for business.
Oh, well, yeah, we'd have to pack up and go overseas to build our boats. We'd go back overseas to build the boat. which would be a shame, because we like it here. We came down here because, there was good skills and good talent down here in New Zealand. And I mean, we would be able to survive. I mean, we've got enough work in these other areas, which I've talked about, to keep us going. So we could stop building America's Cup class yachts. But that's no good for our team. If our team's going again, they'll want us. We'd have to go overseas to build that part of it. We could send people overseas, I suppose, to build it. But we wouldn't have all that other work for all those other teams. That would be a shame.
So what's the best thing for the industry, the phenomenal boat building industry in New Zealand, if and when, touch wood, New Zealand wins the America's Cup? What would make this a true bonanza for people doing the work you're doing?
It'd be tough for Team New Zealand in the sense that they'd have a little bit more competition for the resources down here, but overall, I think they'll be the net beneficiary. I think there'd be a tremendous amount of boats would get built down here because you'd have the advantage of proximity to the race course. You'd have the great quality that we already have, and the capacity that we have to deliver this product. So it could be a real bonanza for Team New Zealand, for New Zealand, if they kept the current rules as they are, which is only 10% has to be built offshore, and the rest of it would be built. A lot of people would elect to build their boats here, I'm convinced.
That's Tim Smythe, who is doing amazing boat building in Warkworth and hopes to be able to keep doing so, but can only do so if the Defender allows the current non-country of origin boat building rules to stand. If Team New Zealand is defending and says, nope, they don't, he will have to take his operation offshore. Fascinating business. Coming up on Checkpoint, do the Todd Barclay tapes still exist? Terror on board an Air Asia flight as passengers are told to pray for a safe landing. And the Salvation Army at the beginning of winter. Year on year, it looks like being tougher than last year. Don't forget, you can text us 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook Checkpoint with John Campbell, or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. Well done if you can remember all of those addresses. And you can watch us, of course, Facebook Live, the RNZ website, Freeview Channel 50, and on Face TV, which is Sky Channel 83. However you are joining us, thank you for being there. It's 22 minutes past 5. A New Zealander who survived a shipwreck in Fiji has likened the moment his yacht hit a remote reef to a freight train hitting a brick wall. Wellington coffee pioneer Jeff Marsland was heading from Picton to Tonga with 4 crew, including SV Jungle owner Peter McLean, when the 61-foot yacht struck the reef 400 kilometres southeast of Suva. Now, Jeff says a king tide combined with no moon that night meant they didn't see the reef and the yacht's radar didn't pick it up. He told me he completely feared for his life.
And I looked out the cockpit and there was just a huge wall of white water. It was just the worst sight you ever want to see. I'm starting to tear up a bit now. And I just said, hey, we're going to hit a reef. Just shouted at everyone. 2 people were asleep and there was 1 person down at the nav table. And it just went crash. It right up onto the reef. And straight away, a massive wave came. We got into the white water, the mast came down straight away. Pretty horrific stuff.
Yeah, terrifying, because what the hell do you do? It's completely dark.
Well,
what did you do?
So everyone was up, everyone was in total shock. It's like, hitting a freight train, hitting a brick wall. We were sailing really fast. We were sailing at about 10 knots. So what we all know now is the bugger was it being high tide on the radar not picking it up.
Yeah.
It was a bugger, but the being high tide was our saviour because we went onto the reef. It was a king tide. If it had been low tide and we hit the reef, it was a massive wave, massive swell. We would have rolled onto the reef, and it would have been a whole different story. We rode up onto the reef. The rig came down. No one got hurt. Something hit me across the back, but no. I mean, on a big boat like that, she's a 30-ton boat, 61 feet, huge big rig on it. It all came crashing down. The boom went across the companionway, and then what happened was it jammed one of our life rafts. It took out on that boat. We've got SSB, we've got VHF, we've got sat phone, we've got sat text. My sat text got washed overboard straight away because it was up at the Dodger. Our sat phone with the first wave got taken out by the wave. Our SSB aerial got taken out when the rig came down. Our VHF aerial and another emergency sat phone got taken out by the boom. So it was just bang, bang, bang.
Holy moly. You've done a lot. You've done a lot of sailing. Forgive me for asking.
I've been sailing with the guy on this boat I've been at sea with him for 35 years since I was 15, and we've sailed all around the world on that boat.
Yeah, you have.
So then there was me and Peter McLean and his son Sam, who owns National Candles. We've done heaps of sailing together, and then my good mate Roger Young, the unofficial mayor of Cuba Street, who's got Fidel's.
Yeah, I know Roger.
So we all had that 30 seconds. Is this how we're going to die? So you don't really want to get out onto a reef in the middle of the night.
No. And I'm going to state the blindingly obvious, but I think now is the time for me to do it. You made it, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, which is a wonderful thing, because you must have been bloody terrified.
Oh yeah, you saw your kids' faces, your wife's, your lovers' faces, like just all our partners. We all looked at each other, and we know that we all thought we were going to die. We just thought it's the worst scenario, And then so it was straight away. It was like, right, abandon ship, get shoes on, get a grab bag, get your life jackets on, grab some food, grab the flares, grab the everything. Just set off an E-perp. But when you set off an E-perp, you don't know that anyone can hear you or see you. So we then got up. So then the boat started breaking on the reef. And the boat started, quite a lot of water was in the boat at this point, so we were grabbing food and everything. We were quickly eating some food. It sort of slowed down a little bit. It went from everything was we were going to die to we had a little bit of time all of a sudden because the boat wasn't breaking up straight away. There was waves washing over but not coming into the boat. But the boat was sort of bouncing on the reef, and we didn't know at any point it was going to crash over. We're so lucky none of the windows punched in them with the wave. So we got out and we sat there. We were having turns of holding the E-perp. And then, so at this point, it would have been probably, 3 hours went really quick because at sea, the thing is you never leave your boat until the last resort. So when it started becoming light, we could see an island. So we thought, wow, there's an island there.
And, as we'll hear after 6 o'clock, the island bizarrely, completely in the middle of nowhere, was inhabited. It's an incredible survival story. We'll have more from Jeff after 6 on Checkpoint. 27 minutes past 5. Passengers on board an Air Asia flight that was forced to return to Australia were told by the captain to say a prayer after an apparent engine problem made the plane shudder like a washing machine. The Kuala Lumpur-bound flight turned back to Perth 1.5 hours into the journey. Due to a technical issue, the Airbus 330 landed about 3 hours after its departure yesterday. Passengers have been recounting the terrifying ordeal, which reportedly began with a bang from the left engine, Graham Acton reports.
That's the disturbing sound on board yesterday's Air Asia flight from Perth to Kuala Lumpur. The aircraft was forced to turn back 90 minutes into the flight after a major fault with an engine left the plane shuddering and passengers wondering just what would happen next. Safely on the ground back in Perth, they recounted nearly 2 hours of sheer terror. Sophie Nicholas says it all began with a bang in the left engine.
It was just like a small explosion almost from the left wing, and the plane just started shuddering a lot, and you could just tell by the cabin crew's reaction that it was really bad.
About 10 minutes after the shuddering began, the captain spoke to the passengers.
Please listen to the briefing. Our survival depends on your cooperating. Hopefully everything will turn out for the best.
The captain goes on to invite passengers to join him in saying a prayer to get the plane safely back on the ground. Another passenger, 23-year-old Emily, was flying with her mum and says the captain's comments sent a chill through the cabin.
I think everyone kind of panicked a little bit just because it sounded like we weren't going to actually get home safely. I think he meant it in a way that, everyone should pray and hopefully, if there's a God out there, that we can all.
Emily says the plane was shaking so badly inside that passengers wondered if they would make it back to Perth.
It was a really traumatic experience. We were just finishing our meals and not even halfway through our trip, and everyone kind of looked at each other and we started freaking out because we didn't know what was going to happen, and the plane started to just shake furiously.
On the ground, marine rescue services on the coast north of Perth were told to prepare for a crash on water. This passenger, Tim, says the mood on board as the plane approached Perth was extremely tense.
Lots of people crying, lots of people pulling out the life jackets and stuff, pretty much preparing. We thought there was a good chance that we were going to go down.
As they taxied after a safe landing, the pilot told passengers he believed a turbine blade had broken off inside the engine. AirAsia released a statement with no details, saying the plane returned to Perth Airport after takeoff for a technical issue. It's just the latest in a string of mishaps for the budget carrier. In 2015, an AirAsia plane crashed during a flight from Surabaya in Indonesia to Singapore. The final report into the crash found the aircraft had a fault with its rudder, which went unfixed for 12 months before the crash, during which time it had flown dozens of times between Perth and Bali. And last year, a series of pilot errors saw the Malaysian-owned airline take off from Sydney Airport directly into the path of other planes above the airport. For Checkpoint, Graham Acton.
Coming up on Checkpoint, Winston Peters calls for the regions to get a greater share of wealth. And he's being applauded in the provinces. And his post-cabinet media conference has just happened. We'll have the latest from that. 60 high-rise buildings are under investigation in Britain in the wake of London's Grenfell Tower fire. The Salvation Army on the position of the people at the bottom of the financial heap as we go into winter. Anusha Bradley has the latest in business news, but before all of it, Anna Thomas with the headlines.
Thanks, John. The 4 New Zealanders rescued from a remote Pacific atoll are returning home in the next few days. The 18-metre vessel Jungle, with 4 New Zealanders on board, hit a reef more than 400 kilometres southeast of Fiji's capital, Suva, early on Friday morning. Speaking from Fiji today, Jeff Marsden says as Jungle crashed onto the reef, they all feared for their lives. The Prime Minister, Bill English, says the Todd Barclay controversy is an employment dispute between 2 people. Mr Barclay will not stand again at this year's general election after the scandal involving a former electorate staff member and a secret recording she told the police the MP had made of her in the Gore office. Bill English is now trying to draw a line under the matter. He says he hopes that the 2 people involved can have some resolution now. The court hearing a challenge to the government's emissions targets has been told global climate change is happening faster than expected. A Hamilton law student, Sarah Thompson, is taking a case in the High Court in Wellington against the Minister for Climate Change Issues, challenging the way in which climate targets have been set. Ms Thompson's lawyer, Davy Salmon, said an international report on climate change found that coral reefs, the engine room for fisheries, were experiencing large-scale bleaching. In Colombia, divers are searching for the passengers still missing after a boat carrying more than 150 people sank at a popular tourist resort. President Juan Manuel Santos, who visited the reservoir outside Guatape, said 6 people had drowned. Survivors complained that they hadn't been given life jackets. And the police say the hunt for a missing Southland fisherman will resume tomorrow after a fruitless search today. The operation began last night after the 29-year-old man from near Invercargill did not return from fishing off rocks at Slope Point. His vehicle, a tackle box and rod have been found. And that's the news.
Thank you so much, Anna Thomas. Time now for business news, 27 minutes to 6. Anusha Bradley sitting beside me. Hi, Anusha. Tower, is at the centre of a bidding war?
Indeed, that's right, John. So Vero Insurance, which is owned by Australia's Suncorp, they have upped their offer by 10 cents to $1.40 a share. That beats an offer by a Canadian company, Fairfax International, which was offering $1.17 a share.
It's a lot more, isn't it?
Yeah, so Suncorp may have a slight advantage in that it already owns a 20% stake in Tower, and it's arguing that its bid offers compelling benefits. It will create significant value for its shareholders and also bring more competition to the market. It also says it's going to give Tower customers access to a greater range of services and products. Tower is in a trading halt at the moment and is considering both bids. Yeah. It hasn't said which one it prefers yet, but it has previously said that neither offer is enough. That neither offer reflects the true market value of the company. So you'd think that this higher bid might be a goer, but Suncorp still has to get the clearance of the Commerce Commission because it's a big Australian company and it owns Vero, it also owns AA Insurance and also Asteron. So I guess it's just wait and see, watch the space.
Yeah, what I've heard is that Tower still regard themselves as undervalued, but maybe the new bid response to that. Sky TV and Vodafone, obviously we covered at length the Commerce Commission saying no way to that. What's happening now? What next?
Yeah, so today they announced that they're not going to, they're going to take away that, withdraw that appeal to the Commerce Commission's decision. They've terminated that sale and purchase agreement with Vodafone. Look, what's next? Well, what's interesting, I spoke to John Campbell, the Chief Executive of Sky TV, a few hours ago, and he said that when the two companies were discussing the merger, they actually realised they could probably get some benefits of a merger without actually merging. They could work on special projects or deals together. And that's pricked up the ears of some of their competitors, and some of them are a bit worried about what that means. So Spark, which is a real rival and was a big opponent to the merger, they are calling on Sky to make any commercial deal it does make with Vodafone, especially over premium sport content, available at the same terms to all other broadband providers. And John Campbell says, well, you know, that's silly, we've been doing that for years, it's always been an offer, but the rivals say, well, no, because the terms are often very strict and unfair. So again, wait and see what they come up with.
This is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah,
because Vodafone need content, Sky need eyes. Sky have the rugby, of course, and we see the value of that during the Lions tour.
Yeah, I mean, this announcement today sent Sky's shares to its lowest level in 8 years, and down more than 4%. It has closed a bit higher than that, but basically an analyst I spoke to said that investors are really worried that if a deal is not be able to done, then Sky's going to struggle even more. It's already struggling. How can it compete with the likes of Netflix and stuff? So yeah, again, watch the space with that one.
Yeah. Sport, I guess, is the answer, isn't it? If you can get enough of it. What happened on the markets today?
So the NZX 50 gained 41 points to close at 7,595. The Australian market is up just 1 point a few moments ago, at 5,717. On the currency markets, the Kiwi is buying 72.79 US cents, 96.04 Australian and 57.12 pence.
And Lucia Bradley, thank you very much indeed. The Prime Minister Bill English has been trying to draw a line under the Todd Barclay controversy, saying he has nothing more to add. The Clutha Southland MP will not stand again at the election. We know this. After the scandal, we know this. Bill English has been questioned repeatedly over the matter after texts between him and the former electorate chairman Stuart Davey were made public. At his post-cabinet briefing not too long ago, about an hour and a half ago, he was asked whether he'd sought confirmation about whether the recordings still exist.
Well, look, I think that's been very well canvassed and answered questions, and there's been a confidentiality agreement over the employment settlement and the issues that were in that, as well as a police investigation, so I don't really have much more to add to it. The police had 10 months to have a look at that and any other detailed issue, and they've come to their own conclusion, which is evident to everybody. Talked to a whole lot of people, so it's I don't have anything more than what I said to them.
Bill English is insisting that this matter all stems from an employment dispute.
I mean, you just got to remember, at the heart of this is just two people who fell out badly. I happen to know them. That's what's at the heart of this, and I would hope that as a result of this whole process, where the third step's been Todd Barclay making a decision about leaving Parliament, that there's some resolution to the sad situation of these people whom I know well, who are good people, who've served their communities and who fell out badly, and everything that's flowed has just come from that very simple fact. And I've answered the questions.
Bill English speaking just over an hour ago. Winter has only just begun, but already the Salvation Army fears it may be among its busiest ever. In the past 3 years, the Salvation Army's food banks, emergency accommodation provision and financial support for people unable to pay rent, power bills and unexpected costs has returned to levels only previously seen during the GFC. And early signs are that this winter will be up on last year. As the Army launches its winter appeal, like many NGOs working with the poor, it's struggling to cope with the demand. Most notable is the number of children the Sallies are helping, up from 16,000 in 2014 to almost 19,000 last year. And again, that figure seems to be rising. A combination of accommodation costs, the housing shortage, increased food prices and winter heating bills means this is the busiest time of the year.
The poverty factor for children in New Zealand is not disappearing.
That's Major Pam Waugh, Head of Social Services for the Salvation Army, who says that after all the media coverage and all the raised awareness, the problem isn't diminishing. In fact, demand for their services is greater already this winter than it was at the same time last year.
We're measuring around about 10%.
10% up year on year.
That's what we're looking at, what we're going to find. If we look at what we've been doing since the start of the year, we've got more demand for welfare. We've got more demand for assistance such as clothing. People's housing costs are impacting in a big way on them, and they're just not keeping up.
A 10% increase year on year after a year which saw almost 14,000 food parcels distributed to 10,000 families over winter, 4,000 of them first-time clients. In part, more food is needed because accommodation costs so much. Naomi Lazelle is Community Ministries Operation Manager in Waitakere, West Auckland.
I'd estimate about 90% of the people who walk through our front doors have some kind of issue with housing, whether that's overcrowding, inadequate rental accommodation, struggling with high rents or high mortgages, or plain straight-up homelessness, sleeping in their cars, under bridges, garages.
Pressure at the bottom squeezes down. Lever was in Naomi's office this morning. He told me where he sleeps, and at first I didn't register what he'd said.
I sleep under the bridge.
Under the where?
Under the bridge.
Wow, it must be cold at the moment, is it?
Yes, it is cold.
Where once Lever would have had some shot at some form of accommodation, now the demand is so great, the shortage so chronic, there's nothing for him. Last winter, the Sallies provided 32,000 bed nights of temporary accommodation. This winter looks set to be more.
Yeah, it's cold, but especially on when it's rainy days, it's just being outside. It's always cold. There's no place to hide.
This is life at the very bottom. The Sallies have long waiting lists for warm, dry accommodation, with children on those waiting lists, and winter ailments are starting to appear.
So these children, when we see them, are suffering from coughs and colds, things like that then, if not treated well, and they get onto some, if it's antibiotics or just some normal help with good warm stuff, they're going into the next group, which is the bronchiectasis and those other illnesses that we don't want to see kids get in because they have a long-term impact on the kids.
So, Lever, how old are you?
I'm 32.
Gets the best care the Salvation Army can provide, as much as they can give, they do.
Well, they gave us free lockers where to keep all our clean clothes and stuff. It's where we wash all our clothes. They have a washing machine for us. They have dryers. We come here for breakfast, and then we pretty much hang around here for the day, and then just eat here at Sally's. They got all the coffees and everything. So we pretty much come here for it's like a home to go to. So we have showers here, breakfast, wash our clothes, and they've got lockers outside. They give it to us for free, so we keep all our stuff there.
Lockers, breakfast, a shower, a laundry to wash his clothes in, but there aren't enough beds, not even close. And in Auckland, a surprising number of people seeking help from the Salvation Army have jobs.
I would say about 30 to 40% of the people we see, one or more of the parents in that family are working.
Roughly a third.
And they're struggling to survive, particularly in winter. It's not a budgeting problem. A lot of them access our budgeting service, but they just don't have enough money to both pay the power bill and buy food for their family, or in some cases they don't have enough money to pay their rent and do anything else.
The Sallies and agencies like them do what they can with what they've got, but Pam Waugh believes it's time we address this collectively.
As a New Zealand public, we need to rally around. We need to say this is enough. We need to step up and say how can we all work together to stop this happening within our communities.
The need is rising. Winter, with its heating costs, does this every year, and when there's nothing in the kitty, increased costs really hurt.
And providing a food parcel for people does take some of that pressure off, I think. But it's still a horrible situation to be in, I think, having to ask for food so that you can pay a power bill. No one should be struggling to feed their kids or stay warm or find shelter. Yeah.
You're with Checkpoint. It's just gone 16 minutes to 6. Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has cut short a trip to London to return home after a deadly explosion. Killed more than 150 people. Over 100 were critically injured when an overturned fuel tanker exploded in the Bahawalpur district. Dozens of villagers had gathered at the scene to try and collect leaking fuel from the tanker when it was engulfed in a massive fireball. As the ABC's Stephen Smiley reports, the disaster is another example of the desperate situation many Pakistanis face when it comes to fuel.
Beside a stretch of bitumen road running through flat green fields, thick black smoke rises into the air. The smouldering remains of an oil tanker still lie scattered along the roadside, and locals at the scene continue to look for the missing. For Saraiki Akbar Muhammad, the search for his nephew is in vain.
Our house is near the site where the oil tanker overturned. When the oil tanker burst, my nephew with another friend went over there. We tried to find them over there, but we can't find them. Now we're going to identify bodies in a hospital instead.
Officials in Pakistan are still counting up fatalities, but the latest estimate is that 153 people died in the blaze. Locals at the roadside say the crowd swarmed to the site after an announcement over loudspeakers at a nearby mosque that the tanker had rolled, spilling oil.
The oil tanker capsized. People shouted, "Oil, oil." The local traffic police asked people to leave, warning it may explode. Then suddenly there was fire.
I had already taken some petrol. I was about to fill another can but felt dizzy due to the fumes, so decided not to go back for more.
The tanker tragedy highlights how desperate some have become to get fuel in Pakistan. Pakistan's population of 190 million people is growing rapidly, but the country simply can't get affordable power to most of its people. The distribution network is outdated and the bureaucracy is inefficient. Each day over summer, more than 100 million people either have no power at all or swelter through 12-hour-long power cuts. Former Pakistani government planning minister and International Monetary Fund economist Nadeem Al-Huk says the energy crisis has been 10 years in the making.
It is consuming a large part of the budget, which means there's less money for education, health, etc. It is eating into the pockets of the people, and obviously that means people have less money to invest in things that they should invest in.
Dr. Al-Huk says Pakistan's energy system has been distorted by World Bank schemes that ended up leaving the country reliant on oil imports. He says Pakistan has plenty of scope for hydroelectricity and solar power, but investment has been slow.
We did well for a while until the oil price shot up, when the guarantees began to hurt us.
Nadeem Al-Huk says while millions of Pakistanis live in poverty, their government spends billions of US dollars a year meeting expensive oil supply contracts. He says that's money that would be better spent on schools or hospitals.
That was the ABC's Stephen Smiley reporting. The Wellington High Court has been told in a first-of-its-kind case that New Zealand needs to be bold on climate change rather than slowly shuffling along with the crowd. Hamilton law student Sarah Thompson has taken a case against the Minister for Climate Change issues, challenging the way in which this country's climate targets have been set. Our court reporter Anne-Marie May reports.
Ms Thompson's lawyer Davey Salmon said the Minister Paula Bennett had failed to reset New Zealand's climate change targets under the Paris Accords as required, and the case will look at mandatory matters which should have been considered as part of that. He said the 2-degree emissions reduction agreed on in Paris was not a target to aim for, but something for decision makers to take note of.
The goal was not aim for 2, the goal was stay well under 2, aim for 1.5. And if, for example, we're right on that, then this decision becomes very easy, because it is clear on the decision-making papers that the decision-makers misdirected themselves about the target.
Mr Salmon said there was scientific evidence in the papers before the court showing the extent of the harm global warming could cause to the planet. He said, for example, the last time the planet was this warm, the sea was between 6 and 9 metres higher than it is now, and there were warnings of massive population displacements, food and water shortages, and reef collapses if no change was made.
What happens when tens and tens of millions of people migrate across land masses or seas because of lack of food and water? And what the report is really forecasting there is a stressor on geopolitical stability that has no precedent. It is impossible to read these documents and not be frightened.
Mr Salmon said he was not asking the court to set an emissions reduction target or determine nuanced factual policy issues, but he was asking that those with the decision-making power, in this case the minister, should be told to go back and make their decision properly as required by law. He said there had also been a suggestion by the government that because New Zealand was so small, our efforts would not make much difference, but that was not the way to solve a common problem.
When the ship is sinking and there are enough buckets, it doesn't matter how big they are, everybody bails, and it's unreasonable to decide not to because we are smaller.
Davy Salmon said an international assessment report on climate change issues found there was narrowing headroom in which the planet could avert catastrophe. He said, for example, that coral reefs, which were described as the engine room for fisheries, were experiencing large-scale bleaching, and the sea around the Antarctic ice sheet was warming. The Crown lawyers may begin their arguments tomorrow. For Checkpoint, Anne-Marie May.
The demand for mental health services is at an all-time high. The latest, most recent statistics show more than 168,000 people were seen by mental health and addiction services last year. That's nearly 50,000 more than just 8 years ago. The rising population, greater awareness and post-quake pressures in Canterbury have all been cited as part of what's behind the increase in demand. New Zealand's suicide statistics remain stubbornly high, with about 500 people taking their lives each year. The country has the highest rate of youth suicide in the developed world. As part of the Is This the Brighter Future series, our reporter May Heron and visual journalist Rebecca Parsons-King spoke to one woman about her experience with the mental health system.
Not to be here, not to be anywhere, and soon, nothing more terrible, nothing more true.
In her dark times, Freya Sadgrove finds comfort in the poetry of English writer Philip Larkin.
A vast, moth-eaten musical brocade created to pretend we never die.
The 24-year-old struggle started when she was a teenager.
I was 15 and I realised that people were really sad, and then I got really sad. I don't know, that's kind of simplifying it a lot, but I was really got really depressed.
Years later, partway through university, things got a lot worse.
I got to a point where I was like, I better tell my parents how bad things are, because things were real bad. So I had to send them an email, because I was like, I can't talk about this with my mouth words. So I sent them this sad little email.
She then visited her doctor.
My GP could tell I was really bad. Like, I was really bad. I was like suicidal, I was in a lot of danger. And she was like, 2 weeks. And at this point I was like, 2 weeks was like a very long time that I couldn't imagine getting through.
And unfortunately, Freya didn't get through. She ended up in emergency psychiatric care. After this, her doctor urged her to stay away from the public health system.
If it is possible for you and your family, you should go private if you can, because the public system is overloaded and you will have to wait a very, very long time.
Freya suffers from depression, anxiety and bipolar disorder, but she considers herself lucky because her mother was able to step in and pay for her treatment.
I wouldn't want to be in the public health system, in the public mental health system at the moment, because it is possible for me to not be in it, and therefore like free it up this minuscule amount for someone who doesn't have the opportunities that I have. But if it were a more effective system, then there wouldn't be all these layers of weird guilt.
The number of mental health clients has increased by over a third since 2008 to 168,000. And last year, 200,000 more people were diagnosed with depression and nearly 300,000 more diagnosed with a mood or anxiety disorder than in 2007. Since it took office, the National-led government has boosted mental health spending by $300 million. In this year's budget, it committed an extra $224 million over 4 years. But is that enough? Freya doesn't think so.
There are too many people needing to use a system that doesn't have enough people to deal with like the volume of trouble it's faced with.
She thinks it's mind-boggling that key initiatives are not being funded. Lifeline's 24/7 helpline currently receives no government funding after losing a contract in 2015.
It's good. A lifeline. Like, why would you? Ugh. That was a bad decision. I have occasionally called helplines, and if I hadn't called them, bad. That'd be bad news for me.
Faced with a system under stress, Freya says she and her friends turn to each other instead. However, it's not always easy speaking up.
I worry about them when I'm that version of myself in front of them, that it will affect them badly, and then I see friends in crisis, and it is really, it's a lot to deal with. When you're just a little person going around in the world, and everyone's real sad.
Freya is now working, flatting with friends and managing her illness, and she credits the people close to her for where she is today, and not the mental health system.
My family really helped me, and my friends really helped me, and there are ways, and there should be ways, that it doesn't have to be the be-all and end-all, it doesn't have to crush you.
For Checkpoint, May Heron.
And if you want to read more stories like Freya's, please do go to our website rnz.co.nz. The time on Checkpoint is 4 minutes to 6. Winston Peters calls for the regions to get a greater share of wealth they help create is being applauded in the provinces, but the government's not having a bar of it. The New Zealand First Leader wants the GST paid by tourists to be returned to the region in which they spent the money. He wants the regions to get a 25% share of the government's royalties from water, oil and mineral extraction. Political reporter Benedict Collins has more.
With the election less than 3 months away, Winston Peters says it's time the regions got their fair share of GST and royalties from resources. The Thames Coromandel Mayor Sandra Gowdy says Mr Peters is on the money, and getting a slice of tourists' GST would help regions cope with the pressure they put on infrastructure.
Yeah, I'd back that one. Certainly a timely comment, and it's something that local government has been sort of lobbying to get for quite some time in various forms. I think it's certainly better than the bed tax that's being proffered by Phil Goff for Auckland.
She says most mining occurred in the neighbouring Hauraki district, and they would be excited by Mr Peters' 25% royalty proposal. The New Zealand First Leader said at his campaign launch in Palmerston North at the weekend that while the regions generate an enormous amount of the country's wealth, they receive little in return.
Now I noticed you got on the West Coast, no Maseratis there, no BMWs virtually there. I go to Thames, where all extraction of gold happened. I don't see any Maseratis there, or any of the flash cars, no, because they've just been gouged out for central government's advantage.
But Sandra Gowdy says far from being in the economic doldrums, Thames is booming, thanks to Auckland's phenomenal house prices.
We've had a whole new resurgence of people from Auckland relocate to Thames and are loving it, absolutely loving it. And Thames has got this feeling of just about being on the cusp of sort of taking off. So we're in a pretty good space, we think.
Gisborne's Mayor Meng Foon says the GST idea is fantastic, and he's got a similar proposal that he'll be presenting to the local government conference next month.
Tourists that come here, the ratepayers still have to pay for their rubbish, the water usage, the use of the roads and other public amenities, toilets like that. So if they spend something in our district, it will be good. A proportion of that GST goes to helping the residents that actually pay for that infrastructure and the operation of that infrastructure.
But the Finance Minister, Stephen Joyce, says Winston Peters' proposals would knock a $1 to $3 billion hole in the government's books. Mr Joyce says the regions are already getting their fair share.
Well, the government went and did the exercise and looked at all of its expenditure. We did this about 3 years ago, at all its expenditure across all the regions in the country, and we found that all the regions got about the same amount of money on a per-head basis, except if anything, the Aucklanders, the Wellingtonians and the Christchurch people got a bit less, and the smaller regions get more.
Winston Peters also says it is demonstrably wrong that foreign companies can bottle New Zealand water for export for a pitiful token fee while making millions of dollars of profit. Mr Joyce says the government has set up a technical pricing group to look into the cost of water, but he says any returns from this activity wouldn't be a significant amount of money. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Benedict Collins.
About 45 seconds before the news at 6, we had a report on Air Asia leaving Perth, and then the plane was shaking like a washing machine, sort of washing machine you have in your parents give you when you go flatting or whatever, one of those really shaky ones. And then look at it, actually Kelvin is rolling the footage, it just looks terrifying. They were told to pray, which I don't think is ideal advice from the pilot, but anyway. Rhonda has emailed in, "Hi John, just to balance your report in Air Asia, we've returned from a fabulous holiday in Malaysia where we took 6 Air Asia flights. The airline was brilliant, left on time, arrived early, nice planes and efficient staff. We will continue to fly Air Asia." And that's a very lovely note to send in, Rhonda. Thank you.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Good evening, I'm Anna Thomas. A New Zealander rescued from a stricken yacht feared for his life as it crashed into a remote Pacific atoll. The 18-metre vessel Jungle, with 4 New Zealanders on board, hit a reef more than 400 kilometres southeast of Fiji's capital, Suva, early on Friday morning. Speaking from Fiji, Jeff Marsland told Checkpoint that the yacht's radar failed to see the reef in the king tide.
You know, you saw your kids' faces, your wife's, your lovers' faces, like just all our partners. We all looked at each other and we know that we all thought we were going to die. We just thought it's the worst scenario, you know.
Mr Marsland says when dawn broke, they saw there was an island nearby and its 4 inhabitants helped them to safety. The Prime Minister, Bill English, is dismissing the Todd Barclay controversy as an employment dispute between 2 people. Mr Barclay will not stand again at this year's general election after the scandal involving a former electorate staff member and a secret recording she told the police the MP had made of her in their Gore office. Bill English has been questioned repeatedly over the matter and is now trying to draw a line under it. He says he hopes that the 2 people involved, Glenys Dixon and Todd Barclay, can have some resolution now. The Finance Minister says Winston Peters' proposals to send more money to the regions would put an incredible hole in the government's books. The New Zealand First Leader wants the GST paid by tourists to be returned to the region in which they spent the money, and for the regions to get a 25% share of the government's royalties from water, oil and mineral extraction. But the Finance Minister Stephen Joyce says this money is already being used by the government to provide services and infrastructure throughout the country.
Well, the government went and did the exercise and looked at all of its expenditure. We did this about 3 years ago, at all its expenditure across all the regions in the country, and we found that all the regions got about the same amount of money on a per-head basis, except if anything, the Aucklanders, the Wellingtonians and the Christchurch people got a bit less, and the smaller regions get more.
And it's the Finance Minister Stephen Joyce. A tourist boat packed with about 160 passengers has capsized on a reservoir near the Colombian city of Medellin, leaving at least 6 people dead and 28 missing. Rescuers, including firefighters and Air Force helicopters, have been searching for survivors at the Guatape reservoir where the ferry sank. A flotilla of recreational boats and jet skis rushed to the scene, pulling people from the boat as it went down and avoiding an even deadlier tragedy. Survivors described hearing a loud explosion near the men's bathroom that knocked out power a few minutes after the boat began its cruise around the giant lake. As water flooded on board, pressure built and people were sucked under by the sinking ship. The High Court in Wellington has been told that scientific research has shown that the negative effects of high greenhouse gas emissions are being seen much more quickly than was expected. A case has been taken by a Hamilton law student, Sarah Thompson, against the Minister for Climate Change Issues, challenging the way in which climate targets have been set. Here's our court reporter, Anne-Marie May.
Ms Thompson's lawyer Davy Salmon said an international assessment report on climate change issues found there was narrowing headroom in which the planet could avert catastrophe. He said, for example, that coral reefs, which were described as the engine room for fisheries, were experiencing large-scale bleaching and the sea around the Antarctic ice sheet was warming. Davy Salmon said those setting New Zealand's emission targets could not have thought it was reasonable to match those of other countries. He said the science had already shown the collective reduction that would be achieved was still not sufficient to avert the effects of climate change. This is Anne-Marie May.
The county's Manukau District Health Board says some employees could lose their jobs following the cancellation of a conference. The DHB has cancelled the annual APAC forum organised by its Ko Awatea Innovation Hub for Queensland in September. It has also confirmed the Ko Awatea director, Jonathan Gray, has resigned, but says that was for personal reasons and occurred before it decided to cancel the conference. The DHB's acting chief executive, Gloria Johnson, says Ko Awatea and quality improvement remain a key part of the DHB's work. However, some staff members may not remain employed if they were working on the Australian conference only.
We won't need a team to run a conference if we're not doing that. But the vast majority of the staff involved in Ko Awatea are involved in activities which are part of our core business. So that's not going to change.
Dr. Gloria Johnson. It's 6:05. The Team New Zealand coach Ray Davies is adamant they'll be treating tomorrow just like any other America's Cup race day. The New Zealand syndicate is just one win away from reclaiming the America's Cup from Team USA. Davies says they'll go through their usual pre-race routines, but believe there'll be any extra nerves.
This is what the team does, and we put ourselves under a lot of pressure at events all the time, and that's what, world-class sport is. You sort of live in a bit of a pressure cooker. So, look, it is just another day's yachting for us, and there's huge consequence if we can pull it off. But look, there's pressure, but you just actually rise to that occasion.
Ray Davies. All Blacks coach Steve Hansen has responded testily to claims by his British and Irish Lions counterpart that his side deliberately tried to harm Lions halfback Conor Murray during the first test. Warren Gatland's accused the All Blacks of intentionally diving into Murray's legs to hurt him rather than trying to negate his kicking game. But Hansen has labelled Gatland's comments as predictable, saying 2 weeks ago he was saying the All Blacks cheated in the scrums and then said they were blocking. Hansen says there was no deliberate ploy to injure Murray. And the New Zealand motor racing driver Scott Dixon has won his 41st IndyCar race with victory in the latest round in Wisconsin. It's put him just one behind Michael Andretti, who is third on the all-race winners list. And that's the news.
As well as coming out your wireless, Nights with Brian Crump is available online around the world, everywhere from Lagos to Los Angeles.
That's the bass crump, crump moves and the crump finishes that come. Like I say, it's a freestyle, and that means you can come up with moves, you can be creative, you can find the power of the dance, power of the crump energy.
Enter the Crump Zone, radionz.co.nz, or tune in weeknights after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Another short forecast to midnight tomorrow for Northland and Auckland. Isolated showers clearing. Waikato, Waitomo, Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and the central high country, fine weather. And for the rest of the North Island, showers easing and mainly fine weather with some cloudy areas. For Marlborough, Nelson and Canterbury, cloud increasing tomorrow with a few spots of rain in Canterbury from the afternoon. Buller and northern Westland, a few showers in Westland from tonight. Southern Westland and Fiordland, rain, possibly heavy, easing to a few showers tomorrow morning and clearing in Fiordland. For Otago and Southland, cloud increasing, a little rain in some parts this evening and tomorrow, but clearing. And for the Chatham Islands, showers. RNZ National, it's 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint with John Campbell.
Thank you very much indeed, Anna Thomas. Tomorrow morning at 5:12. What? Feet clad in red socks will have toes crossed throughout the country. Team New Zealand is sitting on match point in Bermuda, of course, after winning two, really trouncing Oracle Team New Zealand in the two races this morning. It is 6-1, first to 7 takes it. Could tomorrow be the day? The Team New Zealand crew gave a masterclass in foiling their 15-metre cat, dominating the start of both races this morning and leading to the finish. In the second race, they looped around the American boat, bringing it almost to a halt and romping away rather pointedly with a 30-second victory. The race tally now stands at 6-1 in the first to 7 final. In Bermuda, Oracle skipper Jimmy Spittle was frank in his post-race assessment.
Well, these guys sail better. They made fewer mistakes and they deserve to win 2 races. We clearly just made too many mistakes today. We came out fighting. The boys put in, 100% as they always do. And, you know, we're in a tough situation now, but we really have to, we just had a great meeting then with the boys, and we've just really got to take this one race at a time now. You know, clearly the plan wasn't to be in this position again, let me tell you, but we're here. So now it's up to us to respond and react. And, you know, we'll just come back out tomorrow, really try and take all the lessons from today, and we'll focus on one race at a time.
The two-time champion Australian skipper isn't giving up hope yet after being in a similar position 4 years ago in San Francisco and pulling off one of the biggest ever sporting reversals, as if anyone could forget. Spittle even says he's prepared to relinquish the captaincy if that's what's required to beat Team New Zealand this time. The New Zealand team has spent 14 years trying to win back the trophy. It lost to the Swiss challenger Alinghi here in Auckland. In 2003, helmsman Peter Burling is keeping his cool, despite being tantalisingly close to a victory that would see the old mug brought back to New Zealand.
For ourselves, you know, we've made it no secret. We've come here to try and win that America's Cup, and, you know, when we went into this, we had to win 8 races, and you have to win the last race. So nothing's changed. Nothing's changed for us at all, and no, we're just excited about that opportunity to do it.
Peter Burling and his crew aren't the only ones excited. Do you use that word about Peter Burling? He's as cool as a cucumber about Team New Zealand sailing to the brink of victory and avenging that humbling defeat in San Francisco. 30 years ago, Sir Michael Fay backed New Zealand's first America's Cup campaign in 1987. He was inducted into America's Cup Hall of Fame in 2002, and I asked him how he thought Team New Zealand would fare tomorrow.
The sailors have lots of superstitions, John, and for me, green was never a very good colour to go sailing with, and I think saying what's going to happen tomorrow at a race is not a very good thing either. But in the same breath, you know, comparing apples with apples, there's always a risk out there. But if you're a bookmaker, I don't know what odds you'd give Oracle at the moment, but they're very, very long to come from here. You know, I think we've had 8 races altogether, haven't we? We got cleared that jack up of the -1.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So New Zealand have won 7 and they've won 1 year, so that's 8. Yes.
So you know, if you just look at that, and then they must have put everything into it. I think they've made some bit of speed gain, but I don't know if they've made net a lot of ground on us. The boats are close, but we're much more reliable, much better sailed, and their boat doesn't seem to like getting its hulls down in the water at the start today, the second start. That was a brilliantly executed effort, and that just had them stalled while we bore off and away we went. I mean, I think it can't get a lot better than that. So they might get 1 or so, but I can't see that they're going to get 6 off us. And at a point in time, the team stops functioning. You know, Joe, it's just too much pressure. And unfortunately, I've been there a bit more than I've been there for the joy of the win. It's the pressure that starts to count at a time like this. So I would say New Zealand will pick this up again, and it'll be another regatta in New Zealand, and all credit to this team. I don't know how they do it as well as they do. It's unbelievable.
Sir Michael Fay racing at 12 minutes past 5 tomorrow. If New Zealand win that race, it's over. Let's return to the New Zealander who survived the shipwreck in Fiji and says he feared for his life as his yacht smashed into a remote reef in the middle of the night, 400 kilometres southeast of Suva. Remember, there was no moon and there was a king tide, so the radar didn't pick up on the reef. Wellington coffee pioneer Jeff Marsden was heading from Picton to Tonga with 4 crew, including SV Jungle owner Peter McLean, when the 61-foot yacht struck the reef. This is an extraordinary story, first of really bad luck, then of really good luck. Let's start with Jeff saying the impact was like a freight train hitting a brick wall.
And I just said, hey, we're going to hit a reef. Like, just shouted at everyone. 2 people were asleep, and there was 1 person down at the nav table. And it just went crash, it right up onto the reef, and straight away a massive wave came. We got into the white water. The mast came down straight away. Pretty horrific stuff.
Yeah, terrifying, because what the hell do you do? It's completely dark.
Well,
what did you do?
So everyone was up. Everyone was in total shock. It's like, you know, hitting a freight train, you know, hitting a brick wall. We were sailing really fast. We were sailing at about 10 knots. So what we all know now is we were the bugger with it being high tide on the radar not picking it up.
Yeah.
The bugger, but the being high tide was our saviour because we went onto the reef. It was a king tide. If it had been low tide and we hit the reef, it was a massive wave, massive swell. we would have rolled onto the reef, and it would have been a whole different story. We rode up onto the reef. The rig came down. No one got hurt. Something hit me across the back, but no. I mean, on a big boat like that, she's a 30-ton boat, 61 feet, huge, big rig on it. It all came crashing down. The boom went across the companionway, and then what happened was it jammed one of our life rafts. It took out, on that boat we've got SSB, we've got VHF, we've got sat phone, we've got sat text. My sat text got washed overboard straight away because it was up at the Dodger. Our sat phone with the first wave got taken out by the wave. Our SSB aerial got taken out when the rig came down. Our VHF aerial and another emergency sat phone got taken out by the boom. So it was just bang, bang, bang.
Holy moly! You've done a lot of sailing. Forgive me for asking.
I've been sailing with the guy on this boat I've been at sea with him for 35 years since I was 15. And we've sailed all around the world on that boat.
Yeah, you have.
So then there was me and Peter McLean and his son Sam, who owns National Candles. We've done heaps of sailing together. And then my good mate Roger Young, the unofficial mayor of Cuba Street, who's got Fidel's.
Yeah, I know Roger.
So we all had that 30 seconds. Is this how we're going to die? So you don't really want to get out onto a reef in the middle of the night.
No. And I'm going to state the blindingly obvious, but I think now is the time for me to do it. You made it, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, which is a wonderful thing, because you must have been bloody terrified.
Oh yeah, you saw your kids' faces, your wife's, your lovers' faces, like just all our partners. We all looked at each other, and we know that we all thought we were going to die. We just thought it's the worst scenario, and then so it was straight away. It was like, right, abandon ship, get shoes on, get a grab bag, get your life jackets on, grab some food, grab the flares, grab the everything. Just set off an E-perp. But when you set off an E-perp, you don't know that anyone can hear you or see you. So we then got up. So then the boat started breaking on the reef. And the boat started, quite a lot of water was in the boat at this point, so we were grabbing food and everything. We were quickly eating some food. It sort of slowed down a little bit. It went from everything was we were going to die to we had a little bit of time all of a sudden because the boat wasn't breaking up straight away. There was waves washing over but not coming into the boat. But the boat was sort of bouncing on the reef, and we didn't know at any point it was going to crash over. We're so lucky none of the windows punched in them with the wave. So we got out and we sat there. We were having turns of holding the E-perp. And then, so at this point, it would have been probably, 3 hours went really quick because at sea, the thing is you never leave your boat until the last resort. So when it started becoming light, we could see an island. So we thought, wow, there's an island there. So we couldn't see anyone on it, but all of a sudden we all felt better because we thought, well, we can get on a life raft and get to the island, but the wind was blowing the wrong way. We also had a big inflatable tender with an outboard on it, but that just got ripped off and smashed to pieces straight away when we hit the reef. So we'd lost our tender. There's no way we would have been able to launch it. Anyway, so as light came, probably about 8 o'clock in the morning, we actually realised the tide was going out, so we were actually on the reef at this point. The waves were still crashing around us, but the tide started going out, and we were talking about we wouldn't, if we got saved or we didn't get saved, we definitely wouldn't spend the night on the boat. We'd have to get off the boat if it lasted that long and get to shore. So we were talking about ways of how we could do it. We were going to get the fenders and tie them together and some long ropes and swim together and wear the gear and life jackets and shoes on for the reef, because the worst thing is getting on a reef, the coral just cuts you open.
Yeah.
So at about 8 o'clock in the morning, when I went through that whole thing where I hallucinated planes, I totally heard a helicopter, I imagined people on the beach. Sorry, I just hit the bit of
No, it's a big thing. It's a big thing you've been through.
At about, there's a funny bit coming up. At 8 o'clock in the morning, we saw someone on the beach. And we went, wow, there's someone on the beach. So we set a flare off. And then they sort of kept walking like they didn't actually notice us. And there was 3 people and a dog. And we set up another flare. And they sort of got on the lagoon. And we couldn't tell if they were coming to us. We could see them in a far lagoon. They looked like they were just fishing. And we were like shouting. We had a horn. We honked the horn. We set off another flare. And I thought, this is my excuse my language. I thought, this is my last chance. I got one chance here. So I wanted to walk along the reef in my wet weather gear and with a life ring and try and get closer to them, and everyone was telling me not to do it, not to get in the water, but I knew I had one shot, but it was probably a little bit bad protocol. But I left, everyone was watching me, and I got to the edge of the reef where they were, and I was shouting at them, I was shouting, hello, hello, and they were sort of ignoring me, and I just started going, help, help, and they're sort of looking at me, and they were fishing with snorkels and masks, and they were just like waving with big Fijian grins. I'm thinking, this is not how I thought it would be. I'm on a reef. I need to get rescued, and you're waving at me. Anyway, so then I started shouting, bulla, 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 bulla vanaka. And this big grin came out, and he saw me, and he started coming towards me, and he was real apprehensive. And I said, how come you're not coming to me? So they all came at once, and we said, we need help. We need you to help us. And they were really friendly. It was so amazing. Straight away we felt good. And we got to the boat, and we said, what? How come you didn't want to? They were a bit weary. Anyway, they quickly helped us off the boat and helped us along the reef. All we got was our passports and a couple of bits and pieces, and they helped us along the reef, and we went through sort of through the water, sort of swimming and along the reef and everything. And we just got to the beach, and as we just got to the beach, this Orion flew over, so it was midday. So at that point, I just became a blithering mess. But then we walked along into this little village. This village is really basic. Like I do a lot of travelling to remote places. I mean, we were actually heading to Tana Island where we grow coffee in the Vanuatu group. But we sort of got there, and then straight away these people they had nothing, and they gave us they gave us rugby shirts to put on, and we were sitting. They made us a hot cup of tea, and it was just. I mean, it was pigs and chickens. The first thing they said to us was, There's rats on this island, and we think, oh, rats, yuck, rats. But when we got there was hundreds of rats just everywhere, and they said that they came in swarms at night. They said armies of rats come at night. So it was like, and they weren't joking. But anyway, they killed 3 chickens, and they cooked us a big dinner, and we sat around. We'd actually rescued a bottle of Cuban rum off the boat because we knew that we all needed it when the Fijians came and we were getting off, we thought we all needed to have a rum together. It was one of the things we got off the boat was some Cuban rum. We all sat down, had a big banquet with them, and it was just the most amazing night. I mean, we were obviously happy to be saved, and they gave us their beds. They lay next to their beds and gave us their beds, which is unbelievable. And we had a wonderful night together. And then the next day at low tide, we all made it back out to the boat. The Navy turned up, and we gifted the boat's a write-off, uninsured, total write-off, beautiful boat. And we went out with it. We got onto the boat and got some stuff, but basically we've gifted everything on that boat to the islanders, the other 4 people. They just thought, they said that in that morning that they didn't know that. They said, we didn't know you were going to meet us. You didn't know we were going to meet you. Only God knew. Well, I'll tell you what, they thought it was Christmas.
Good.
They've now got beautiful crockery. They've got untold. They've got so much New Zealand meat, and they've got Baileys, and they've got safety gear. They've got VHF. They've got life jackets. I think if we ever go back there, they'll be able to winch out a sun sail over the.
Brilliant. Jeff Marsland telling the extraordinary story of really awful luck, followed by quite remarkable luck that they hit a reef near that tiny bit of habitation really in the middle of nowhere. 23 minutes past 6. Thank you for being with us on Checkpoint. British officials say 60 high-rise buildings under investigation in the wake of London's Grenfell Tower fire have failed fire safety tests. 60 high-rise buildings. At least 79 people were killed in the blaze earlier this month. The building's external cladding is thought to have contributed to the rapid spread of the fire. Tests are being conducted on 600 tower blocks across the country, and some residents are being evacuated as it seems the authorities are only able to test cladding on 8 or 9 buildings a day. The BBC's Duncan Kennedy has this report.
Pendleton in Salford, the latest location where tower block cladding is being removed, is an unsettling sight for another group of residents who've lived here many years.
It's left us as residents very confused and very concerned about the safety of where we live.
Tonight, the government released new figures showing the latest number of buildings to have tests on cladding. They show a 100% failure rate on samples. 60 buildings have now failed those tests. The buildings stretch across 25 local authorities.
The immediacy is to give advice to the residents, to reassure the residents and ensure that those buildings that are high-rise buildings are as safe as possibly can, as quickly as possible.
The government says it can test around 100 cladding samples in any 24-hour period, but at the moment it's only testing about 8 or 9 a day. So with up to 600 tower blocks in need of testing, unless those samples start arriving much more quickly, this is going to take a very long time.
If he's going to try anything...
Arnold Tarling has been a fire safety expert for 20 years. He says cladding currently only has to withstand flame tests from the front. But he says this simply isn't enough.
Make the tests more robust. Test everything, test every angle, then you'll know it works.
Are you moving out? Are you going? In Camden, entire families have today been hauling their possessions away from 4 tower blocks, while safety measures are being put in.
The room will be ready.
We went with Maureen Urquhart and her 87-year-old father Edward to check out a hotel, unsure if they should leave their tower.
I have actually heard they're quite hot. Oh, lovely. Okay.
Maureen went in and filmed on her mobile phone, looking for reassurance.
Oh, there's flies in here.
Afterwards, she seemed satisfied with what was being offered. So how was it? How was the hotel?
Yeah, it was okay. Yeah, it's not too bad.
Good enough?
Yeah, good enough.
Will you move in?
Yes, we will.
Tonight, residents in Camden who've moved out of their tower blocks have been with Muslims celebrating the end of Ramadan, a small moment of relaxation amid the uncertainties their lives now face.
The BBC's Duncan Kennedy with that report from London. 26 minutes past 6, just coming up to. The British and Irish Lions are descending on Wellington for the first of 2 games in the capital. The Hurricanes tomorrow night, followed by the second test against the All Blacks on Saturday. Shadowing the team, of course, are their fans, who bring along with good spirits and great songs rather deep pockets. As Emile Donovan reports, the tour is expected to bring a $30 million windfall to the local economy.
It's a week nearly 12 years in the making, and Wellington's bars and pubs are gearing up for the massive task of feeding and watering the thousands of Brits and Irish roaring into the city. And the branch president for Hospitality New Zealand, Jeremy Smith, says it's not your usual June-July weekend.
Double is probably what you expect as a minimum. With a test match, people come out a couple of hours before the game, have a few beers, have something to eat, and then after the game we'll go out to a club or to a restaurant and things like this. What we're anticipating with the Lions is that we're going to be busy breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then late into the night.
The capital is the only city which will host 2 Lions matches in a single week. And with more than 20,000 out-of-town fans expected to flood the city, the local economy is expecting a big boost. The chief executive of Wellington's Economic Development Agency, Derek Fry, says estimates are well into 8 figures.
Conservative estimate we're saying is 30 million of new spend coming into the region. That's based on the 2005 work, and we've done some extrapolation.
And while the chief beneficiary will be the hospitality sector, Mr Fry reckons there's enough pie for just about everyone to have a slice.
The reach goes right through to the transport, the guy who's delivering tickets to some place, the corporate hospitality, the additional number of students that are required for those part-time jobs. Those things that they touch, it's right through to the schoolboy who was holding the supporters club sign at the airport yesterday.
Westpac Stadium alone says it's boosting its staff numbers by about 30% for this week, and says it'll serve nearly 30,000 hot dogs and 4.5 tonnes of fries. And Jeremy Smith says all hands will be on deck. He's even bringing his own daughter out of pint-pulling retirement to man the bar at one of his establishments.
Along with everybody else that we can find. So if you're looking for work over the weekend and want to serve a beer, then there's a job for you.
So what do Lions fans think of Kiwi hospitality so far? Well, James from Wales only arrived in Wellington yesterday and he's nursing a bit of a hangover. He reckons it's a good way to get to know a city. He says he's saved £12,000 to come on the tour, and so far it's been worth every penny.
When you're a kid in Wales, right, there's 2 things you want to do outside Wales. Hong Kong's heavens, done that, and the Lions trip to New Zealand. This is what everybody wants to go to. And you look around, just around us now, there's flags everywhere, everyone's welcome in. It's awesome. You know, it's everything we thought it was going to be.
And English native Jeff was also suitably impressed.
Everyone's very friendly, quite nice, quite clean, tidy place. We just had a very nice conversation with the traffic warden. He didn't give us a ticket, but he was very helpful.
And while there might be diversity on the streets, there's unanimity when it comes to the game. The prediction from all the people we spoke to, a 3-0 series whitewash for the All Blacks. For Checkpoint, ko Emil Donovan Aho.
I was at the game at Eden Park on Saturday night with my son and my mate Tim, and the Lions fans were absolutely delightful. What great away sports supporters they are. That's it for Checkpoint for this evening. Thank you for joining us on your radio, on your telly, on the internet, however you have joined us. We are delighted to have your company each and every night. You can hear stories from Checkpoint on Late Edition at 10:15 this evening, in fact every evening, Monday to Friday, but from us until tomorrow night at 5. Go Team New Zealand tomorrow morning, and a very good evening indeed.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Good evening, I'm Anna Thomas. A Wellington businessman rescued from a remote Pacific atoll says the faces of family members flashed before his eyes as his yacht smashed into a reef. A vigilante who slashed the tyres of cars near Wellington Airport has had a jail term quashed. A bar owner says Wellington's pubs are expecting revenues to at least double this week as Lions fans roll into town. And the Prime Minister, Bill English, questioned repeatedly over the Todd Barclay controversy, is now trying to draw a line under it. Our next news and weather again is at 7.
A pastoral past and a digital future occupy the same space and time in the music of British trio Alt J. I'm Nick Bollinger and I'll be discussing their messy but majestic new album in The Sampler.